Hello there, namaste. So this is the untold story of Swastika. And I'm actually truly interested in learning this because I know the true meaning of the swastika. I know the love, the peace, the goodwill, the fact that it's supposed to be a sign of longevity. I don't think is the right term, but if you like have one in your house, like in the entryway, it's supposed to bring good vibes or whatever. But the one thing I don't know is like the true history to its origins, and that's one thing I've always wanted to know. I always end up seeing I saw something else which was about the untold story of swastika, and I'm just like, that's not telling me anything about the swastika. But yeah, I'm excited to learn this. I'm hoping it's not slow, but who knows? It don't matter as long as I get to learn something, right?
Swastika, a name that needs no introduction, but the way it is perceived, it definitely does need an introduction. In the West, the swastika is a symbol of hate, racism, and horrors of the Holocaust. If you have any interest about the world's history, you definitely know what I'm talking about. And in a diametrically opposite manner, in the East,
yeah, because that's something that's absolutely funny. I knew at a young age, because I was confused. I remember watching Yu Yu Hakusho. And watching that growing up at a young age, there's fighting monk, because you know that's another Dragon Ball Z. It's another one of those tournament-based animes, and there was a fighting monk who had one on his head, and I was just like, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad, that's evil. And I ended up looking it up online because I luckily at that point in time had access to a computer and had access to the internet, and I found out that the true meaning, like, because I typed in monk and I typed in swastika. And that gave me the real true meaning behind it all. So me at a young age knew what it was, but everyone else around me always saw it as a sign of hate. And the fact that people can't seem to, because always when something drastic happens and you put a name to something, that's the funny thing, is because you make it crooked and it turns into the Nazi symbol, and you remove the dots. But it's fascinating how people's minds, when it comes to something triggering, they'll hold on to that forever. And even though that's not the true original interpretation of things, you take something, you destroy it, and it becomes hard to try and take something back after the fact.
East, it is perceived as a symbol of peace, prosperity, and well-being. And this is the untold history of swastika. Let's get started.
Yeah, I already knew
In
that.
this documentary,
Good stuff.
let's break it down into 3 parts. The first one is the heritage of swastika, how well it is popular across cultures around the world. And the second one is how swastika is abused by the Nazis. And the third one is the most important.
Well, how it was abused by the Nazis was they used the symbol as a sign to gain access to the Tibetan temples, which no foreigner had ever set foot in, because they were hunting for the Aryan race. They wanted to find out about the Aryan race. I love documentaries, so I looked into that. That's like the only thing that really they had to do with the swastika, is they pointed at their shoulder saying, look, we have the same symbol. That was it.
And reason why I'm making this documentary film, the Vedic heritage of swastika, its actual roots. Let's get to this topic.
Thank you. I want to know the actual roots.
And that's the first chapter, the heritage of swastika across the world.
I wish he talked a little more
The
excitingly.
picture speaks 1,000 words, and so do the symbols. Right from the beginning of time, since humans came into existence, the symbols in the cave paintings are one of the earliest known articulations of human thoughts. And with the evolution of the civilizations, a progression has been made by carving those symbols onto the walls of the temples or the tombs. And with further evolution, and as well in parallel, the script got evolved where humans can articulate their thoughts in form of alphabets or symbols. And if we go deep down, say the Hindi letter Ka, or the English alphabet K, or an Urdu alphabet Be, or a number 1 plus sign, or even swastika, technically all are symbols representing a meaning and a purpose. Even our alphabets are also symbols, just that we have raised to that level of consciousness where we identify an alphabet with a sound, calling it as an alphabet and not really as a symbol. Let's try in doing this. Say for instance, I assume that you don't know Chinese, just like me. Take any random Chinese
Mandarin. There's Cantonese, There's Mandarin. You can't say Chinese. It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. I don't need to be, but that always hurts me when I hear it because it's like you don't know Chinese. It's just like it's pronounced Mandarin. That's the primary language. Then there's Cantonese, which is by the lower communities, and then yeah. I don't know why that always upsets me. I had roommates in college from China, and it just always irked me anytime I heard something like that.
Alphabet. It is just impossible for us to identify that it is an alphabet. We don't know whether it is an alphabet or a number or a symbol. So deep down, everything are just symbols. Once we get educated about it, then we start understanding and identifying them as numericals or alphabets or just symbols. And swastika is one such symbol with a clear-cut intent, meaning and purpose. And let's try to understand what it is eventually in this documentary. A very interesting thing with swastika is it is one of the oldest symbols which has been continuously in existence since thousands of years. Take a look at the pottery here, which is from Greece. 760 BC, 400 BC, 800 BC, so that's almost like 3,000 years from now. And if you observe the way these symbols are hand painted thousands of years ago, at least one thing we can say it for sure, that the symbol took the center stage in the aesthetics of that particular pottery. It is not just an ancillary decoration. The painting of swastika on these pottery is clearly intentional, and the maker really want to have this in the center, taking the center stage. Swastika is also found on the coins of the ancient civilizations like Minoan civilization, which is older than the Greek civilization. And the Greece itself, we have certain coins with swastika dating as far as 550 BC. And swastika is also found on...
Oh my gosh, I'm not a fan of the editing. I mean, I can't be one to judge because I probably should add like 100 edits in my own talking, but at the same time, it's like I'm paying attention. I'm just like, he's going kind of slow. But it is fascinating seeing how old some of these things are, and the fact that it is, well, like you said, prominent. It's there. It's the main focus
on the ornaments in the ancient civilizations that thrived in the Eurasia. And these, what you're seeing on the screen, are one of the oldest ornaments from Italy to Scandinavia, at least 2000 to 2500 years ago, currently under display in different museums, having swastika as part of their aesthetics. And like this, swastika has been found in many places across Europe, Asia and Africa, and some traces in the Americas as well, dating back to a couple of thousands of years. And one point what I'd like to make here is swastika is a reasonably complex symbol, and it cannot just happen by intuition. Say for instance, if you're talking about a square or a triangle or a circle, these are very basic symbols. Swastika, as you see, it's not that simple, or
It kind of is simple. It's basically a set of lines. Now, if it was a pattern of curves and things like that, I would say it's more complex. But you have a straight line. You just have to, like I'm making a print, you could plop it, plop it, plop it, plop it, plop it, plop it, and you've got it set. But at the same time, I kind of get, especially like carving it into something or putting it as a window, that takes more time. It is decorative, but yeah, it takes more time.
You cannot just attribute everything to intuition or just coincidence. It cannot be a coincidence. There is definitely a common cultural fabric that has been shared by these ancestral civilizations. Just that we did not decode that yet, how the swastika traveled across these cultures over thousands of years. And many of these cultures do not exist today. And it's very difficult to understand what is the cultural connect with swastika across the civilizations, which are lost in time. But when we get to the east, things are totally different. Swastika is very much alive in the dharmic world, in the traditions like Sanatana Dharma or Bauddha Dharma or Jaina Dharma. In these practices, swastika is very much an active symbol of peace, prosperity and well-being, and is highly revered with different connotations in all these three dharmic traditions. And Sanatana Dharma especially being the oldest religion in the world, if Sanatana Dharma is revering swastika for a good reason, there must be definitely a very deep history connected with it. But what's most important thing here is, these three traditions, Sanatana Dharma, Bauddha Dharma and Jaina Dharma, put together, they form 21% of the global population belong to these three dharmic traditions, which includes Sikhism as well. but they do not worship swastika directly, but they do revere it as one of the holy symbols, as it belonged to the dharmic tradition. So we are talking about 21% of the global population revere highly it as one of the auspicious symbols. Yet,
that's what's fascinating, is like 21% of the population reveres the symbol. Yet for some, well, I guess when the majority, like even now, if you see a circle with a crooked swastika in it, and it's surrounded by red, I think. I'm forgetting what the flag looks like now, but in its solid black, you immediately start thinking negative connotations, and it's hard for people to remove that. It's kind of like what one of the popes did when he was walking through the Vatican. He was taking taking a chisel and knocking all the male body parts off of all the sculptures, because he was, didn't approve that was there. Like the David, the leaf that's in front of those statues was put on after the Pope had removed, had turned these sculptures into eunuchs. Is that the correct term? Yeah, but it's funny how it takes one person to kind of ruin, and that's one thing I find great, is that it's still held on to today. There haven't been people that go around. I'm pretty sure there are people, especially from the West, who will go like to the East and see them and then start preaching hate. I mean, there was that dumb teenager who tossed like soup onto a classic piece of artwork because, they're dumb. And of course, they were from the West. But it's just one of those things. You got to respect the history of things. Like even hatred. Even hatred. The fact that things have happened in the past. You don't pretend they don't. You acknowledge them, but you don't get it arrayed. Like in Germany. Is it Germany? Oh yeah, after it was conquered, all the hate that was written about the people, when they went to rebuild, they didn't get rid of it. There's still the writing of like curses and things like that that were written about the Germans, still engraved and kept there because they weren't going to shy away from their history. And that's what the world needs to do. Not shy away from the history, not bury it under the rug as if nothing ever happened. That's like the most disrespectful thing anyone can do. And yeah, I just love how they're holding on to it.
In the West, swastika is a symbol of hate and racism. And let us try and understand how the symbol of peace got transpired into a symbol of hate. And that brings us to the second chapter, the abuse of swastika by the Nazis. And I want to talk as little as possible about the horrendous Nazi ideology. And just for the benefit of people who do not know about it, you have definitely heard the word Hitler or Adolf.
Well, it's funny. There are people who believe that some of the stuff never happened. And that's the thing. People hide from the truth. People hide and try to pretend things never happened. I'm just curious on how because that's the thing. It's a beautiful symbol, but it turned into such a sign of hatred when the Nazi party took it over. You remove the dots, you make it crooked, and then no one can ever use that symbol ever again in that aspect. Well, of course, the monks and the original swastika is flat, I guess, and not at an angle. But yeah, it's tragic. It's tragic. Because even I see that, and I'm like, I get disgusted. Of course, now when I see it like flat or in looking like a square, I don't think that. But anytime it's crooked like that, it's like, ugh.
Adolf Hitler. He is a barbaric dictator in Germany, and his ideology was like, there are certain races of people who are pure and certain races of people who are impure, and they kind of persecuted the Jews.
The funniest thing is he was half. He persecuted, because he was an artist, like actually sadly an amazing artist, and he tried to get into a Jewish art school. Like the history of, I don't want to get into the, like, just like he said, he didn't want to get much into it, but Hitler was wanting to get into an art school, which it was a Jewish art school which only accept pure Jews, and he was half, so he wasn't allowed. He ends up getting in power and starts hunting them down like animals. not like even like animals, like a kid with a magnifying glass over an anthill. It's just like he was barbaric.
In millions, which is often called as the Holocaust, and is nothing less of what the British did to the India. The swastika was used,
I love how he threw that in there. It's no better than what the British did to the India, because that's the thing. What British did to India is absolutely barbaric. I mean, what is it now recorded that the more deaths happened due to British rule in India than during the Holocaust? Of course, during the Nazi Party, it was a short 4-year period, and if they would have reigned for longer, they would have caused more damage. But the problem is, Britain did reign for a long period of time, causing mass death, causing mass destruction to a great nation, which has again basically climbed its ranks back to one of the top. But it's I love how he threw it in there. I just have to acknowledge that he basically threw Britain under the rug for what they did to India, because that does need to be recognized. We have to acknowledge the past. We have to understand that things have happened, and like give the jewel back. Give the jewels back that were stolen and are now on a crown. That's all I'm gonna say.
Abused by the Nazis as their emblem. Now, I just want to focus on one very important data point regarding this abuse, and that is the reason I'm bringing this up. Let's see what it is. To get to the root cause of the abuse of swastika by the Nazis, we have to go back to India to early 1800s. Those were the days when the India is under the colonial occupation of the British. And we have Sir William Jones, who's posted in Calcutta as a judge. And William Jones is also a linguist and has immense interest in understanding the Oriental languages, including Sanskrit. And in the year 1821, he published his discourses or his research on different Indian languages, especially on Sanskrit. And his research holds an incredible place in the world history of last 200 years. This research of William Jones has transpired many things across India as well as across Europe. Now let's see what is it about. And here is a page from the discourses of William Jones, and I'm quoting it. The Sanskrit language, whatever beats antiquity, is a wonderful structure, more perfect than Greek, more copious than Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either, both Greek and Latin. So basically what he's saying is, the Sanskrit language is more perfect and beautiful than Greek and Latin, two main languages which are the foundational pillars of the Western civilization. And here is the most important thing. What he says is that no linguist could examine all these three, Sanskrit, Latin and Greek, without believing them to have sprung from some common source, which perhaps no longer exists. So basically what William Jones here is hypothesizing about is that Sanskritam, Greek and Latin, all three of them have one common ancestral language which do not exist today. It is a hypothesis that he puts forward, and this hypothesis was eventually taken by people with vested interests, and they brought in a cooked up theory called as Aryan invasion theory. Now I'll not get into AIT what it is. If you're not aware of it, please do your reading. Now, like I said, people with vested interests who are more racist in nature, and India is already been under the occupation of Europeans back then. So they kind of cooked up a theory called as Aryan invasion theory, which says that India was not just colonized now, but it was already colonized thousands of years ago by their ancestors who were Aryans. It tries to establish that certain sects of Europe.
See, isn't that what I said at the beginning? Isn't that what I said at the beginning? The hunt for the Aryan race. I mean, so I've done my research. I'm glad that he pointed out. I was like, if you don't know, do your research. I like how he kind of like shifts that there. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because I feel like, okay, I've already known a bit. I know a bit of research. I don't know everything. Of course not. Nobody knows everything, but I feel like I know a bit, just a tad bit. It kind of makes me feel like I've done a bit.
Europeans belong to this Aryan clan, and this theory is abused by the Nazis to cook up a theory of Aryan race, and you know the whole story. This hypothesis made by William Jones and the presence of swastikas across the world in the ancient civilizations led to this horrendous Nazi supremacy ideology, which eventually led to millions of deaths and the World War, and the rest is history. And that's how the swastika is abused by the Nazis without knowing a thing about what it is or where it came from. And that
Yeah, I mean,
That brings us to the third chapter, understanding the Vedic history of.
yeah, I think I'm gonna stop it there, and I'll continue this later because I'm just gonna keep yapping on. But the fact that it's getting into the verdict history of the swastika next, but it's absolutely fascinating, the whole history of it. The like I already knew about like the Nazi Party and the heinous acts they have done. I mean, everyone knows like Hitler was a Christian, and how he got to using the swastika, I have no idea. I don't know, but it's just one of those things, because he probably didn't even think of it as a swastika. He probably just used it as a sign, just decided to do that. And then it ended up being compared with the swastika. And then it basically creates all this hatred for the sign, because people hear that word. And heck, I would say that word, and everyone, the first thing they would think is people who are completely shaved, skinheads, goatees, like, or it's just the goatee, flying around a Nazi flag, white tank top. I mean, watch American History X if you want to see the actual like visual of it. That's an amazing tale of like the circle of hatred. But it's completely tragic, and I love how this is. He's introducing. I wish he was talking a little more ecstatically. I gotta say that's a little disappointing, because he doesn't sound energetic about the knowledge he's portraying. He's just reading it as fact, which is fine. But the most, anyone who's taking classes knows the most fun classes are the ones where the professor enjoys the subject, when they enjoy what they're doing. Because I'm pretty sure I've watched things and I just don't care that I watch it, and it's a horrendous thing to watch, because I'm just like, I'm bored. I don't know if I say that exactly, but that's the thing. I the only critique I'd have is I wish he was just a little more energetic, but the knowledge, I'm actually finding it fascinating. I'm enjoying learning this. Not so much anything in the beginning, because everything he said so far is things I have known, things I mentioned at the very beginning. It's like everything I mentioned at the very beginning, well, he touched on in the 9 minutes I watched. But yeah, that's it for this one. I'll continue the last section, the third part, which will tell apparently like the real origins and the real history as to it, which is what it was, the last part. I'll do that. I'll have that come out soon. But thank you all for watching. Talk to you next time. Doodles.